Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Maximum warp. Punch it. Punch it!
Punch it, Bishop!
Punch it.
Punch that shit!
Let's punch it.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Punch It. This is episode 52, and my name is Charlene Schmidt, and with me, as always, is...
Tristan Riddell.
Tristan, it is good to be back behind the mic once again with you. Did not have to take a week off, even though we had our holiday splendor. For the U.S., we have Thanksgiving last week, and that is usually a time filled with family stuff and way too much food, and then there's the whole shopping thing that kicks off, and that's actually kept me a little busy personally because of my business. I've processed a lot of orders lately, so I've been very busy selling rather than shopping. How was your holiday?
Well, I'm always excited to hear that about how you are selling more than you're buying, and
by far and away right now, yeah.
So everyone needs to go and get their holiday specials at your website.
Yes, they do, because I got Trek-themed soaps, and in fact, I need to make some more Captain Picard bars because I ran out on Black Friday. So thank you all for your support. I've also got Troy, I've got Wesley, and I've got more on the way that I hopefully will have out very soon. It's just trying to process the orders and make more new stuff. A little bit of a balancing act, so I'm working on it. Just check in on my website, see what I've got going, and if something entices you, please, please, please support my small biz. Enough shameless self-promotion. I want to talk a little personally, though, shifting gears a little bit. We're going to talk about something what might be a little heavy. We're going to discuss how Star Trek writes and portrays things under the umbrella of trauma, things like mental health, traumatic experiences, and whatnot. Of course, this is influenced by Star Trek Discovery and what happened in the last episode before the break, but there's a lot of other examples that we can refer to through all of the series, and we're going to go through them. And aside from Discovery, what spawned this, though, is a little bit of something that I've been going through myself. Now, longtime listeners know that you and I have both dealt with anxiety and depression. We've talked about it. We have no problem talking about it. And guess what? I'm going to talk about it again. I'm going to go on for not hopefully a long time, but here we go. So you know this, and this is actually the first time that I'm talking about this publicly. I've been I underwent a kind of a newer treatment for depression that's not a pill. It's not a medication. It's something called transmagnetic stimulation, otherwise known as TMS. And yes, every time I hear TMS, I think PMS, but they are not related. And what it is, it's this weird kind of thing where you sit in a chair. This device goes against your head and sends magnetic pulses to your brain. Now, this is not the same as electroconvulsive therapy or whatever it's called. A lot of people think that is the shock treatment. This is not quite that. But this has been a treatment that's been out there for about 20 or so years and has a fairly decent success rate. And so what you do is you sit in that chair, it sends the pulses to your brain and does something to your frontal cortex to help you achieve a little bit of remission, if not complete remission, from depression. Also anxiety. For me personally, the two are tied together. So if I'm alleviated from depression, I'm alleviated from anxiety as well. And the goal is if you're on a couple of medications for this treatment to get off completely, or if you're on several to decrease your amount. So I did this for 6 weeks. I went in 5 days a week, sat in a chair for 30 minutes. And so now it's been about 2 weeks since I've been done with this. And I got to tell you that withdrawing from medication is a biatch. It was not fun at all, and that was actually a big reason as to why I had to take that bye week a couple of weeks ago, because I couldn't handle life. I really just kind of needed a break. So once that was done, though, and I got over things like the brain zaps where it feels like little shocks are going through my head from the withdrawal, and now that I'm back on the ground, I can say with some confidence that it is working. And I'm officially off of medication. And if you have been on medication for a long time for anxiety, depression, what have you, and you're looking for an alternative treatment, I highly recommend looking into it. See if there's a place in your area that deals with this. There's usually some sort of treatment center out there. Your insurance may cover it entirely. It might cover a portion of it. Depends on what you have, of course. But overall, the success rate is fairly high. and it may work for you. Now, there's always a chance that it might not. But if you were in a position like I've been, where I've been on medication since I was 19, and I'm 36 now, that's a long time. Side effects are always an issue. I've always been able to function on medication, but there's always just a little bit of drawback. This does not have side effects aside from when you're on medication withdrawal. So give it a try, look into it. It's something that I did not take seriously until very recently, and I'm really glad that I did. Okay, I'm glad I got all that out. I spoke, I think, for 5 full minutes. Tristan, please say something.
Well, obviously, I've been very invested in this journey that you chose to keep me informed on, and I greatly appreciate that, and I think our listeners do as well, because the thing about depression and anxiety and trauma and mental illness and everything like that is that we need to not be scared to talk about it. We need to be open to discuss it, and it's because the more that we discuss it, the more openly we talk about it in public spaces, the less stigma that there's going to be, and with less stigma means more people getting the help that they need. And like you said, like on our old show, To the Journey, which was all about Star Trek Voyager, we talked about this a lot. And I think those episodes where we talked about mental illness, trauma, and depression and anxiety and everything like that, we got some of our most listens, and we got some of our most emails and replies and everything like that. So people were sharing the episode saying, hey, listen to this, check this out, see if you can relate to this. And a lot of people sending us emails saying, thank you so much. I've gone through this. I've gone through that. It's so nice to hear people talk about it, but of course with a positive tone, because when we talk about it, we take it very seriously. Of course, we don't. Oh yeah. We're not cracking jokes. We don't think it's a comedy hour, but at the same time, we look at it knowing that there's light at the end of the tunnel, and that it does get better, and you can get help. You do have loved ones out there. There's always room on the other side to improve and to change, and if you can improve and change, you can at least manage. And there are things like that out there. And
that's the trick too, is managing. It's not always going to be 100% perfect, and there's no ideal time to start. You just have to do it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people out there who are dealing with this topic, so it's incredibly important. And one other side note, we have a Trek family out there. If things suck with your own family, or things in your life are not so great, you've got a supportive Trek family that is looking out for you. Remember that.
And that's the beautiful thing about a Trek family. And I've told the story many times. I came online to find a Trek family, and that Trek family has supported me through thick and thin. I've been pissed at them. They've been pissed at me. I've been happy with them. They've been happy with me. It goes up and down just like a real family.
Exactly.
And
yes.
It's beautiful. And there's tons of people online who are going through something, whether it's severe or minor, but there's always support. And if you can find that online, you can find it in real life. And if you can't find it in real life, you can find it online. It's just, there's so many avenues for support. And the beauty of what you have been going through is that when you started talking about the procedure, I have never heard of it. And I try to keep up to date when I can, but if I've never heard of it and you found out about it through this, I'm sure there's tons and tons of people who haven't found out about it. And when you described it to me, this is going to sound ridiculous, and I'm not trying to make light of it, but when you described it to me, I was like, holy crap, that's just like in Star Trek.
It's kind of a strange little contraption. I mean, you're in this chair that reminds me a little bit of a dentist chair, honestly. And that's not a terribly bad thing, because there's no drills, so don't freak out, because I hate the dentist too. But it's like this device that goes on your head and on the side of your head, on the left side. And then it sends this thing, and it makes sort of like a little woodpecker-like sound as it gives you the pulses. And then you're just sitting there watching Netflix. Honestly, that's what I did. I started watching Lost. That's what I did for half an hour every day for 6 weeks.
There's an episode, there's this Voyager episode called Repentance. Mm-hmm. And what happened in this episode was there was a ship full of prisoners on their way to the death penalty. And Voyager was battling with that. And then one humanoid in particular got sent to the medical bay, and I can't remember why. And the doc just found something in his brain, just something that was misfiring, or something that was analogous to the pineal gland. And just without thinking, doctor just boop, used his magic wand and fixed it. And then all of a sudden, this person who was a sociopath got these rush of emotions. Now, what I'm saying, I'm not trying to connect people who are sociopaths with people who have mental illness, or, like people who don't have emotions with people who have depression. Obviously, I'm not making that kind of connection. But what I'm saying is that what you're going through is the wave of the future. What you're going through is, removing yourself from medication and trying to move away from big pharma and doing a procedure that is long-lasting, non-invasive.
Right. Yeah, I'm not cut open or anything like that.
And if that isn't Star Trek, if that isn't Crusher and the Doc and Bashir and Bones, using
true.
technology and equipment to enhance and better our lives, not only physically but mentally, I mean, like we're stepping into that age. And since, this is a writing podcast, this is Punch It Writing and Star Trek, I mean, we want to go over some of these characteristics. We want to go over how some of these characters are written, whether it's depression, anxiety, trauma, or whatever, or, assault or repercussions of that, or anything like that. Like,
right. How was it written? Was it portrayed well?
Accurately, inaccurately?
Yes.
Was it rushed? Was it not?
Yeah, and we have several examples to go through. So why don't we delve into that now? I want to start with The Cage, the original TOS pilot, the very beginning. I want to bring this up because there's one scene in particular that's always resonated with me from that episode, and that's where the Doc is talking to Captain Pike and saying, hey, look, you look tired. And then Pike just cuts him right off and he says, yeah, you bet I'm tired. And he goes into that speech of, I'm really tired of choosing who lives and who dies. And it really brings out the weight of the captaincy. You are responsible for all the lives of your crew. It is a very weighty job. It's not something that he takes lightly whatsoever. And it's kind of torn him down a little bit mentally. It's worn him down. How relatable is that? I mean, maybe we're not captaining starships, but I think all of us in our jobs, our careers, at some point feel just really tired or broken down, or just, just you feel the weight of what you're doing if you have a lot of responsibility. And that too is mental health. It's not trauma, but we have to find ways to keep ourselves going when stuff gets tough like that.
And I think we even got a little touch of this in Star Trek Beyond at the beginning, where
yes.
Where Kirk is kind of going, he realizes that he's going through the motions, and he's like, space seems endless and the days are blurring together.
Episodic.
Yeah, it's episodic. You don't have a sunrise. You're wearing the same outfit every day, and so is everybody else. And so I think they definitely could have explored it more, but that doesn't really make for a big blockbuster movie.
No, but it was cool that we had that nice montage.
Yes, I liked it too, because it's something that we don't normally explore with the captaincy. Janeway was a big example of exploring mental illness in the captaincy, but it wasn't necessarily it wasn't from the everyday mundane of being a captain.
Right.
And so that's why I liked it in Star Trek Beyond. But also going back to The Cage, one thing that I really enjoyed is, or let me rephrase that. One thing that I found interesting was that the same thing that happened with Star Trek in The Cage is what happened with Firefly, the show Firefly, because in the Pike in The Cage, like NBC and the execs were just like, Roddenberry, what are you doing? This guy is morose. He's sad. He's not like a rough and tumble.
He's a downer.
He's a downer. What's going on? And then they're like, fine, screw it. We'll reshoot it. And we'll get Captain Kirk, who's just like, hey, everybody, let's have a good time, And
yeah, I'm ready for a fist fight. Yeah.
And that's what happened with Firefly, except they didn't recast Nathan Fillion. They just changed his character, because if you see the original, like if you go to the Blu-ray, the DVD, and you look at the original deleted scenes, it's very much the war is hell. What are we doing here? I can't go on. But then when you actually watch the pilot, it's just, he's cracking jokes. He's cracking wise, and he's very much. He goes from Pike to Kirk really quickly with just changing a few lines here and there.
Oh, how interesting. I think the reality is the more morose tone. And yes, it is hell and it is monotonous. I mean, we like to think of space exploration as, ooh, how exciting and all that. But if you're out there for 500 some days or longer, the routine really might wear on you, especially if you don't get much shore leave. And then meanwhile, though, for entertainment purposes, then you've got the upbeat Captain Kirk ready for action because it's funner to watch.
And I think with TNG, like since TNG introduced the luxury liner Enterprise, I think that's probably why we didn't tackle these concepts as much in the Next Generation, because the Enterprise D was very much a sense of we perfected space travel. We bring our families. We bring the holodeck. We bring the arboretum. We, we have anything that you could possibly eat and drink, and you have off-duty time. You have off-duty outfits. And so it was very much like normal life, just moving through space. But when you look at Voyager, and you get some of that in Deep Space Nine too, obviously, because it's on a station. That's the home. But when you look at TOS and Voyager and Enterprise, it's very much we're cramped together. It's a submarine. It's a military vessel. War is hell.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of TNG, I didn't come up with too many times where they actually addressed mental health and trauma. The one big one, of course, is Picard. After he's assimilated in family, where he breaks down. And we had never seen Picard even come close to this. And it really, I think, for us as an audience, humanizes him. He is fallible. He did go through trauma. He is traumatized. He has to process that. So to see that it makes it one of my very favorite episodes, to be honest, for that reason. The fact that they did address it, because they could have not with episodic TV. Next week, he could have been fine, but I'm glad they didn't go there because that's not realistic.
It's a beautiful episode. It's a beautiful trilogy, 3-part journey for Picard with Best of Both Worlds, part 1 and 2, and then family. And like you said, I mean, like he was close to perfect. This character never did anything wrong or made the wrong choice. And a lot of people complained about that with TNG, where everybody was perfect. Everybody was the paragon of virtue. And I think if you can't make people make bad decisions, like if you have these, because it's the flagship of the Federation in the 24th century. So we're looking, and it's the bridge crew. So it's the best of the best of the best of the best, which we have mentioned several times. But if you can't make them screw up royally, even though they have, and I think it's an oversimplification, you can have horrible events happen to them and then see how they deal with that events that are outside of their control. Because that's the thing. Mental illness can pop up or trauma can pop up, and it's not because of something you did. It's not because of you made a poor decision, or you lost all your money, or your wife divorced you, which all of that can cause trauma and mental illness, but sometimes it just happens. Sometimes things pop out of nowhere. Sometimes they develop slowly. Sometimes they happen in a bang. And it's just great that Star Trek was able to show us slow burns as well as pop, events.
Yeah. Oh, thank you so much for saying that, because it is so true. Mental illness, dealing with depression or trauma or whatnot, that is not a failing. It is not your fault. It is something that just, it does happen. A lot of it can be genetics that has environmental triggers. It's a mix. It varies from person to person. Sometimes it's just circumstances. And then once they're done and processed, they go away. But yeah, for even the closest to perfection that humanity has to offer on the Enterprise D, things did still happen, because that's life. Life is imperfect and messy, no matter how perfect you are, And I think Gene Roddenberry, I think, really wanted to get away from that as much as he could. But you know what? It's hard to create good dramatic storytelling without some sort of problem or situation. And so, when we got certain things, and I'm thinking specifically about like when Troy, the many times that Troy was assaulted and abused and whatnot on TNG, I'm thinking, guys, you're not very good at this. Because I don't think they thought it through very well. I didn't think they addressed repercussions very well. And I mean, Marina Sirtis' portrayal, fine. She did the best with what she was given. I think, honestly, in this respect, with this specific thing that they did a couple of times to her, unfortunately, that's another issue. Why do this so many times? But I don't know. They didn't go deep enough. They didn't go about it quite the right way. And I can't even fully blame it on episodic storytelling or 80s storytelling or anything. It's just they touched on the action without the rest of it. It's like the iceberg. You get the tip of it, and then there's all this other stuff down there you could have gone to, but you didn't. And it's really flat, and it looks awful.
Yeah, this is one of those times where Star Trek didn't really handle it too well. I mean, like, like Picard and family, fantastic.
Yes.
Troy, all the other times, not so great. And actually,
specifically in Nemesis, that was just awful.
oh, that was pointless. That was utterly pointless and unneeded and forced upon the audience and forced upon the character.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't even add anything to the drama, but that's neither here nor there. So one thing that I've noticed that, like, in the episode Eye of the Beholder, which is in TNG, Deanna is investigating something with Daniel Kwan. Like, he's a specialist who committed suicide, I believe. I think that's the character. And she was asking a friend of his, was he prone to depression or mood swings? So Deanna, as a counselor, knows that these things exist. They clearly still do exist in the 24th century. And some of you might be like, oh man, really? Like there's no cure, there's nothing. That's not what that means. As we were talking about before with depression and mood swings, it can happen out of nowhere. It's not your fault. It can happen because of circumstance. It can happen because of genetics. It's still going to happen. In the 21st century, what they're saying is that, it's not like they're going to perfect it from birth so that you're always happy or you're never sad. What it means is that they recognize it's there. They openly talk about it. And if you are prone to depression or mood swings, you can get help and you should get help. And that's the beauty of the good times that this is. Let me rephrase. This is the beauty of well-written
there we go.
Mental illness and trauma and everything like that in Star Trek, is that you see them actively trying to get help, or people are trying to convince them to get help, or they are looking for help. Right.
Because the awareness is out there, you spot somebody who does need help and you reach out so that they reach out.
One of my absolute favorite portrayals of this, so much so that I wrote my own story around it, was O'Brien in Hard Time, when he spent 20 years. It was a jail cell of his mind. Like, in his mind, he gained 20 years of imprisonment memories, even though it's only been like 20 minutes in real life, but it was still real to him. And so going through this was a traumatic event, not only going through that, but also coming out of it on the other side. And that's something that's not touched upon a lot in fiction, is that once you go through the event, and even after you get help or you're out of it and you're in a good situation, there is still lasting effects, even after you try drugs or talking or breathing, whatever you do.
Whatever you have to do, yeah.
It can haunt you for a very long time. Now, granted, this was one episode.
Right? It's 45 minutes, but they still crammed so much good stuff in there. I think this is one of the better episodes where they have portrayed the lasting effect of trauma, what it means, how it affects somebody.
Yes, and with this, they even mentioned at the end, like, O'Brien was ready to kill himself. He was ready to end it. Now, he had a daughter, he had a wife, he had a good job, he had good friends, but he couldn't take it any longer. It was out of his hands, and it was because of the love of a friend and the love of his support system that helped him through it and literally took the phaser away from him. And at the end, Bashir mentions, we'll be able to help this with medication and other avenues. Again, not showing a stigma towards utilizing medication to help with this, which is something that I had a hard time getting through when my anxiety started kicking in.
Yeah, you mentioned this on that episode of To the Journey that got so much feedback, and I think a lot of people are resistant to taking medication because there are side effects, there is a stigma, and it's just hard to admit, hey, I need some help. But I always liken it to, like, if you had high blood pressure and you have to go on medication for that, wouldn't you just take it? You'd be a lot more prone to just saying, yeah, I'm going to go to the pharmacy today, get that filled, and start taking it so I feel better and my blood works better. But for whatever reason, with mental disorders, we have this taboo. So don't feel bad about being on medication. I can say after many years of being on medication, it can help, it does help, and if you need it, take it.
Now, one show that we've, of course, talked a lot about in the past and has a lot of examples of everything that we've been discussing is Voyager.
Of course. Now, we have two distinct examples of depression being portrayed by two different people on this show, which I find interesting.
And I think you could argue even more Because what you're referencing, if I may put words in your mouth, is B'Elanna Torres and Janeway.
You would be correct.
But if you look at it, we've seen a lot of people go through a lot of things. We've seen Neelix go through his own crisis after he was brought back from the dead.
Right.
We saw the Doctor go through his own crisis after he had to, quote unquote, sacrifice one crewman to save another. And
yeah, that's a good one.
you also had Seven, who had an identity crisis and didn't know where she belonged or where she needed to go, or if she was of any value, or if she could have any humanity left in her. And so I feel like the Voyager crew just is the most human and relatable on top of that.
I would say that they went there a lot more with the Voyager crew, and specifically with the big examples of Janeway and Torres, they're dealing a little bit with the loss of being away from home. You know, Janeway has carried so much guilt on her shoulders all this time, and she's kept herself so busy just trying her darndest to get this crew back that when they were in that void in the episode Night, it finally hits her when she has too much time to think, and it cripples her. It took her 5 years to get there. I mean, that's pretty strong, because I think that would break anybody down. And I love the fact that they did finally address that. And of course, yes, 45 minutes, and eventually next week she's fine. I thought they could have done a little better with that, but they did try to at least to portray that this was kind of a slow progression of sinking in, because she'd been in her quarters for, a couple of months? So this wasn't instant. It did gradually happen, as it does. So they did get that part of it right. But I do feel like coming out of it, there should have been a little more. But then we get B'Elanna's story, where with the loss of the Maquis, knowing that a lot of her friends are dead, and dealing with that, she's dealing with it in a more extreme way, as Klingons do. They're extreme creatures. But you have Chakotay there, who's there to kind of save her from herself at this point. When she can no longer help herself, he is there. He's there, okay, I am your friend. Let me take over for just a second, and let's get you back on track. And it thankfully, it works. And it's not all resolved in 1 hour in this instance. There's a couple of episodes where we kind of see her acting a little strange. She's not herself. And then we see her doing risky things in the holodeck and what have you. I felt like that was a much better portrayal, even though they did do a decent job with Janeway. What do you think?
Well, with Janeway, I like that you pointed out that it wasn't a story of something beginning in one episode and ending in one episode. We did see the end of it. We saw the summation, but it did reference that it had been going on for a long time. So we didn't see it on screen, but at least they recognized that this isn't something that just boom and then disappears. So
right. I mean, usually in episodic TV, the person falls right in and then has to fall right back out as soon as it happened because they've got to wrap it up.
Exactly. And so I think where it does fail in that area, it also succeeds just because the bar is a little low and in episodic television.
They got it about half right. That's how I feel about it.
And with B'Elanna, I do love this portrayal just because, obviously I'm a big B'Elanna fan. And so
that's your girl.
It's hard for her to do wrong. But a lot of people had some issue with how Chakotay handled it. Some people say, you can't be forceful, you can't push, because he pushed literally and figuratively with B'Elanna to get help and to confront her fears. And a lot of people didn't like that. I think sometimes that is necessary, because I've seen it, I've lived through it. I've had a person push me into confronting what I didn't want to confront. And so it can be necessary. Now, is it advisable all the time? Of course not. You need to know the individual.
Yeah, exactly. It varies by the person and the situation. But I would say this was any further, and B'Elanna probably would have either hurt or killed herself. Chakotay recognized that, and being the good friend that he is, saw that and knew that he did have to step in.
Someone who we forgot to mention? And, and folks, please, I'm sure that there's plenty of things that we're going to miss, plenty of things. This is not a comprehensive list. This is just some of our favorite stories or things that are popping up in our brains. But if we've missed anybody, please go to thenerdparty.com/contact, select Punch It from the drop-down menu, send us some of your favorite stories that deal with things like this and storylines like this and characterization like this. Let us know. You can find us on Facebook as well at facebook.com/thenerdparty, on Twitter at @joinnerdparty, as well as Instagram. You can find me personally on Twitter at @theinsanerobin.
And you can find me at Oh the Profanity. And if you're comfortable sharing with the Trek community, the episodes you find relatable, that would be fantastic. That would be, I think, I don't know, a little cathartic, maybe. And also, if you want more information on TMS treatment, you're more than welcome to ask questions. I'd be happy to help as much as I can.
And also, like, if you want to say something that's relatable or tell your story, you can also keep it anonymous. Just let us know in the email.
Sure.
And we'll talk about it or not talk about it, depending on what you dictate to us.
Absolutely.
And we'll also put some of those links to the procedure that Char's been talking about in the show notes. And you can find all that by going to thenerdparty.com/punchit. Now, Char, the character that I'm talking about that we missed was Nog in Deep Space Nine.
Oh, right. Yes, I would definitely say Nog went through some trauma of losing his leg, and he's been in a war situation on top of it. So, a little PTSD, yes?
And he had escapism. You know, like he went into the holosuite and he wouldn't come out. And he had pain of the limb, but it was in his head. But then so was everything, you know. And
right, on top of just kind of dealing with the rigors of wartime. I mean, if you think about how incredibly intense that has to be. I have never been to war. I cannot say from personal experience what that is like, but I can only imagine. Mm-hmm. You hear stories, people coming back, they fall into severe addiction. Maybe they become alcoholics, they become gambling addicts. For Nog, it was the holosuite.
That was his addiction, yeah.
You are looking for an escape. You want to get out of your head for a little while. You want to stop thinking about all these horrible things that have been consuming you for months, maybe years on end. It makes sense.
Yeah, it was. And this was one of those one-and-done type scenarios. But for the medium, for episodic television, I thought it was well adjusted. I thought it was well maintained and a good story. And from a character that we don't normally focus too serious of stories on. Right.
Usually the Ferengi get the ha-ha shtick comedy-like episodes. Mm-hmm. They may or may not be funny. But yeah, I mean, actually, you know what? That is my favorite Nog episode just because it really, I don't know. Nog is one of those surprise characters who gets to be a much more fully formed side character than you would ever think he would be. But this gives him just that much more. It makes him so much more real to me for some reason. And then I love Nog.
When Nog is first introduced, you're just kind of like, ugh, okay, whatever. This is an annoying, one-note character, but like so many characters and so many things in Deep Space Nine, it gets fleshed out more than you could ever possibly imagine.
Exactly. He becomes so much more than that teenage boy who wants to cause trouble with Jake.
Now, we need to start wrapping up, but we still have Enterprise to talk about.
We do have Enterprise, but we also have Discovery. So honestly, I didn't find a whole lot with Enterprise. For whatever reason, they just didn't kind of delve into this a whole lot. We have T'Pol's drug addiction, which it's sort of not really under this umbrella. It's an addiction, not so much a trauma, because trauma did not lead to the addiction. Mm-hmm. And then you had an example with Trip dealing with the loss.
Yes, there was an episode where a deck exploded and one of his engineering crew died, and he was exhausted, he was anxious, he was dealing with a lot of issues because of what was going on with the Xindi War, and he started hallucinating. He started seeing this crewman kind of walk through the halls, and so it's one of those situations where you're just like, is this really just from exhaustion, or is this hallucination brought on by guilt or depression? We're not quite sure because I don't think they really explored it from that angle, but I feel like people who have been through this or have actually gone through something like this might relate to it on a more visceral level than you and I.
Yeah, that's something that I wanted to say about that is I do think it is a realistic portrayal where I think if you are going through something as monumental as the Xindi disaster, attacking Earth, imagine how many other people were not sleeping at night because of some sort of loss, or they're trying to rebuild and it's just exhausting. And every waking thought is centered around dealing with the issues that are centering around this incident. I'm sure people who experienced 9/11 firsthand felt that way, maybe still do. And we have traumatic incidents happening all the time, whether it's a mass shooting or some sort of natural disaster. Yeah, I can imagine it would be exhausting to the point of where you're hallucinating. If you're sleep deprived enough, you will hallucinate.
Yeah.
So that's good. Now, before we get into Discovery, trigger warning. I don't think that we have delved yet as deep as we're going to with addressing things like sexual abuse and trauma as we are going to right now with Discovery. If this is going to affect you in a negative way, please skip this part. So we do have to wrap this up. So I want to say I really wish Discovery would have given a trigger warning to this episode, because I know that a lot of people were really profoundly affected by it and not necessarily in a positive light. However, I do want to say the conversation that Ash and Burnham have when she kind of says, hey, what was up with this? Who is she to you? Referring to L'Rell, who was his assaulter. I thought that was beautifully done, beautifully written, beautifully acted, and Burnham was the type of person, like, she did everything right. She said the right things and she did the right things so as not to make the situation worse. Would you agree with that?
Yes, I thought it was what Burnham did was magnificent for TV. It was something that you don't normally see, because in that moment, the one thing that I really appreciated was something that they didn't do and would have been so easy to do, was have quote-unquote healing sex between the two of them.
I was so worried about that, and I'm so grateful that that did not happen, because we even see that Burnham stayed with him through the night, but not in a sexual way. She was there sleeping.
Yes, they made a point to show that she took off her jacket and nothing else.
Yes. Yeah, that was very well done. The issue that people had was the way that the flashbacks were portrayed, because it's from L'Rell's point of view as opposed to him, and I absolutely agree with that now that that's been brought to my attention. It should have been about him.
Yeah, there was it's such a horrible area to talk about, because when I first saw it, I thought it was well done, because I was like, oh, this is creepy, this is grotesque, this is horrible, especially once you know the backstory. If you didn't know the backstory, I'm sure it would be a little like, okay, are they trying to make this sexual? Are they not? Is this assault? Is this not? But knowing the backstory, it's clear what they're trying to do. But then once I went online and a lot of people were talking about it, I was like, oh, I never thought of it that way. I didn't see it that way. I didn't think of it that way. And so it opened up my eyes to different perspectives, which I think is one benefit of being in the Trek community.
Absolutely. I learned so much from that conversation. I saw the flashbacks as a little more violent than anything with sexual overtones, but
Same here.
People saw it in a very different way. And unfortunately, we could go into a lot more detail about that, but the conversation has kind of happened. So why don't we wrap up the show? And next week, we're going to have a little less of a heavy topic.
That's right. We're not going to be talking about this all the time, but we might come back and revisit this, because I'm sure that Discovery will continue this storyline and continue the assault storyline and delve deeper into the trauma that happened to this character. And you bet that Shar and I are going to be talking about it with you guys, and we want to know what you guys think as well. But next week, even though it's going to be lighter, we're going to punch it.
Ready for warp, sir. Let's punch it.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.